Council. First item would be adoption of the agenda.
Move. Second.
On adoption, all those in favor? Motion is carried. One delegation this evening, a man who needs no introduction. His Hawaiian shirt is very familiar to these chambers. So we'll welcome Donald Jaquest to speak from the podium. You have 10 minutes, as you know, for your presentation.
Thank you. Thanks to Council for allowing me this time to make a presentation for you. Today I'm here with a request, and the request is that Council add a question to this fall's ballot on what becomes of the golf course once the current lease to the Comox Golf Club expires in 2033, 15 years from now. Great cities often have great parks that are located right at their core. If you look at London, England, you've got St. James Park right downtown, Buckingham Palace. If you look at New York, you've got Central Park right in the core of Manhattan. When you were in downtown Vancouver last time, did you walk maybe down to Stanley Park and take advantage of it? And if you did that enhance your visit there? And the answer would probably be, of course it did. Can we really imagine these cities without these great parks? In our downtown, we've got the Comox Golf Course, roughly 47 acres. And for years, I commuted back and forth along Church Street, and I love the views. I mean, it's great. But apart from looking in from the outside, most of the people of Comox don't use this piece of property. I strongly believe that this green space would be much more valuable to the community as a public park, and that if it were a park, it could enhance the lives of all Comox residents and visitors. For me, this mostly boils down to the number of potential users. I think thousands of people would use it as a public park, whereas right now as a golf course, I think hundreds of people are using it. Comox has control of this land because of a 1966 agreement where Robert Filberg conditionally gave his shares in the holding company to the town in trust. Well, it was back then, it was the village of Comox. And the town has to use those shares to ensure that the said lands shall be used for no other purpose than that of a public golf course or public park. And there are a variety of provisions that are specific about how that's handled in the future. The Comox Golf Club actually leases the land from the holding company. And a little over a decade ago, Council agreed to extend their lease by 25 years to 2033. And that allowed the golf course to take a mortgage out and expand, renovate the clubhouse. And they needed a longer tenure for the property in order to get a longer term mortgage. What I'm asking for relates to what happens after the current lease expires 15 years from now. That's 2033. Why a park? For me, this is a question of public access and use. A park is generally open all day, every day, for all public use. As it stands now, the public can golf at the course, but only when members aren't using it for their activities. That to me isn't a fully public space. And that it isn't really public is demonstrated by the fact that the Comox Rec Department doesn't book its Learn to Golf programs at the Comox Golf Club. Those are booked at Glacier Greens. And even when we have had, in the past, staff golf tournaments, those were generally either at Longlands or Glacier Greens. As I mentioned before, I think that as a public park, this land would be used by thousands of residents and visitors in a variety of ways. The OCP mentions the golf course only once, just in passing. as part of the description of downtown Comox. It designates the property as public open space. So, what kind of parks do we have? We have active parks with play spaces, baseball diamonds, soccer pitches, tennis courts. We've got passive parks that are basically green lawns that people can spread a blanket out on, can have a picnic, they can throw a frisbee, they can fly a kite. We have greenways that are used by pedestrians and cyclists. We have nature parks. And much of our green space is combinations and permutations of these. I think the golf course has room for all sorts of these different uses. If you imagine, I'm going to go back here, imagine a network of trails, right? One along the north side that would connect Church to the Stewart Greenway. Imagine boarding a network of trails that comes off Gordon Street. That's the closed road access behind the cenotaph. Imagine a walkway, a greenway up the west side of the property along Church. We've upgraded the Cottonwood Greenway and we've upgraded Robb. There's all sorts of potential loops in here that could occur if there were greenways through the property. And those sorts of loops really do draw people. I've been amazed at how many people now travel to Lazo Road to use the multi-use path the town built there a couple of years ago. I think this has the same kind of potential, maybe more. What about active uses? There's plenty of room for any active sports facility the town might want to build. Okay, perhaps outdoor racket courts. I promise not to use the P word. Stanley Park has a pitch and putt course. So if you want to retain some of the golfing element there to recognize the property's history, there's room for a pitch and putt. There's room for any active use you want to build, and you've already got a parking area and a clubhouse. After those, greenways and active areas, there's plenty of room for forests and trees and passive open spaces for people to just walk and enjoy. Greenways, active play, passive areas, and forest, all downtown. So, why ask this question now? The lease doesn't expire for 15 years. That's a long time. Well, here are my reasons for suggesting that it should be asked now. I think primarily this is related, in my mind, to the implementation of the 2014 OCP bylaw. Now that has been Council's top priority over these past 4 years. The OCP called for increased density in Comox's downtown, particularly closer to what we think of as downtown Comox, right? But in all the areas around it as well. Council has adopted the OCP and the related zoning, and they've implemented a number of other initiatives, including the downtown revite incentives. Now I know those incentives are still early on in terms of bearing fruit, but I truly believe that you'll get there in the end, that we'll end up with more people and that they'll be living in our downtown core. Once they do, once those people are living in or near downtown, won't they need and want more park space? This property can address that need if it's a public park. Another reason for asking now is that Comox residents are, shall we say, wary of change, and this is a big change. The referendum question suggests a substantial change to how we use this important piece of property. But it's 15 years down the road. And in 15 years, we can accommodate any concerns the community may have about this idea. Another reason for asking the question now is that the golf club could return to council at any point in time. They could have been here last week or the week before asking for yet another extension to their lease. Their last extension request was well before the lease was set to expire, and it was approved for a fairly long extension, 25 years. I would like to see a community discussion on the future of this property occur before that eventuality happens. I note that council could add the referendum question to October's ballot at negligible cost. We're having the election anyway. What about the golf club? Well, the golf club, in its website, acknowledges the history of the property, the Filbert Trust, and it says that if it is no longer practicable to retain the area as a golf course, it must become only a public park in perpetuity. Now, the club's website suggests that this change could happen at the 99-year mark of the Filbert Trust, which would be 2065. But as you know, the 1966 trust agreement doesn't refer to that particular deadline. It just says that in keeping with the trust, we have to retain the property as a public park or a public golf course. Mr. Filbert clearly foresaw that it might not be feasible to keep a golf course there forever. He realized that this was an extraordinary piece of property and that it was much too valuable to be left to development. A final reason that I think this is a good time to ask the question is that if the ultimate future of the property is determined to be a public park, I hope that's the result, then at some point in the remaining 15 years of the lease, it's possible that the club itself might come back to us and ask that the town take over its tenure. You'll recall a few years ago they came to council and asked for an expanded property tax exemption, and at the time they were citing financial concerns. Now, demographics are kicking in and we're all getting older day by day. What happens to the golf course in the future? Can they maintain their membership? Can they maintain their fees they're charging? I don't know. But it's possible that they might reconsider and come back to you if the final determination has been made to make this a public park. When you look at Comox from above, if you use Google Earth, or if you happen to be way up high looking down, the most significant geographic feature you see downtown is that land. At the end of the golf club's lease, I believe that Comox would be marvelously enhanced by having that space as a public park that would be potentially used by thousands of residents and visitors. And that Comox, particularly downtown Comox, would be a much better place for people to live, work, play, and visit because of it. Thank you very much for listening to my request. And I'm happy to answer questions.
As you know, there's opportunity for council members to ask questions. So go ahead. Any questions? Councilor McKinnon.
Yes, thank you for your presentation, Don. Just wondered if you have contacted or met with anyone at the golf club executive about this.
No, I have not. And I'm burning my bridges by coming to you first. I know that Gordy Baudet and some of the people I know from the club, like the Taylors, are going to be supremely ticked at me. But I've been here in the community for 17 years now, and this has been weighing on me for a while. And I'm not the only one that's had thoughts about what are we going to do with this property long term. I know they won't want to give up their tenure. I know that. But even if the referendum occurs, and even if the public say yes, they've still got 15 years to use the property as it is.
Any other questions? I have one. As you may or may not be aware, we have been talking recently about reviewing our OCP. So that'll probably unfold over the term of the next council, perhaps by 2020. So the question I would have for you is, wouldn't that be an opportunity then for the community to weigh in on a whole host of issues, but including public green space? Because usually what we do at juncture is get an analysis of how much public space we had, as we did last time, and leading up to the 2011-2014 process. So what do you think about that?
I guess my thought is that if that dialogue were to occur, I'd be thrilled by it. But it didn't really evolve out of the last OCP review. And if you look at the process that council went through to approve the 25-year extension, because the property isn't directly owned by the town, all the town owns is shares in a holding company. That lease was extended without any public debate. If you do a long-term lease of town property, you have to advertise it in the paper. That didn't happen. This can be done by council just passing a motion. And I agree that it would be much preferable to have a debate as part of perhaps an overall land use plan, but I'd love to have the question asked this fall.
The other 2 points I was going to make is we don't own all the shares, as you know.
Correct?
And the second point is, how would you then deal with maintenance? Because obviously the fact that it's a golf course there, it's maintained through the golf course process. If you took that on as the town for a park or other purposes, there already is significant parkland that we have to maintain. And as you know, through the budgeting process, that requires from time to time additional staff and additional expenditures. So that would have to be considered.
I recognize that this would cost the taxpayers money because you'd have to look after the property. You'd undoubtedly have capital upgrades to convert it. And as well, you'd lose, because the golf course gets a 3/4 exemption on their property taxes, if it became all park, then you'd lose even the 25% you do get, which isn't a huge amount of money, but it is part of the cost. I would guess, I didn't have a chance to meet with Al Fraser and discuss this, but I suspect that overall this might cost you $100,000 a year as part of your budget. But when you look at an almost $20 million a year budget that the town has, I think that's, I think you get a lot back for that expenditure. And in terms of the capital costs to convert it, you can build that into your parks DCC, right? If you're taking this property and converting it from golf course to a public park, particularly if you're doing it for the purposes of infill development, you can use your open space DCC to fund those capital changes.
So, when you ask a question on a referendum, people like to know what are the costs and the ramifications.
And I'm sure,
although it might be easy to put a question like that on the ballot, there would be a lot of work that have to be done to educate the public on the pros and cons. And so I understand what you're saying. Yeah, it doesn't cost anything more because you're doing during the election, but there would be a lot of work that have to go into why should you vote yes, why should you vote no, those kinds of things, like you did, for example, when we did the library acquisition. So, I mean, those are some concerns I'd see. But we'll get another question.
Don, great presentation and very thorough as usual.
You're shocked.
No. So, following up with what Paul was saying, because I was thinking the same sort of thing, that we don't own all the shares. So there's members of the public, and forgive my ignorance because I've always been kind of confused about that whole golf course. So there's members of the public that own part of the shares, and does that mean we would have to buy them out, or they would become shareholders of the park? How would that, and what percentage do we have? Do we have 51? They have 49?
we have, as I understand it, the town holds a majority of the shares. Not by a lot, there's some 300 and some shares. Staff could provide you with a copy of the Filbert Trust Agreement. It's specified in there how many shares. Roughly a quarter of the shares of the ownership has kind of dropped into disarray. The owners have moved or died, and there's nobody to step forward and claim the shares. So there's roughly, I think, about 70 or so shares owned by members of the public, and I think the shares have a nominal value of about $50 a piece. This has been a reality since 1966, because when Robert Filbert gave the majority, when he quietly acquired a majority of these shares and then gave them in trust to the town, And when he did that, under the terms he provided, he basically locked the others out. He wrestled control of the limited company from them. Whether you would want to offer them a buyout, that would be up to council.
Right, okay. Thank you.
Anything further? There's a couple maybe hands here. Okay, go ahead, Councilor Prince.
I think it's an intriguing idea, and I very much personally like it. So when because you know this to a greater depth from your past with the town, and certainly I do. So when you say that we could look to a buyout, would we be looking at the $50 shares, or would we be looking at the value of that land? I guess its only value would be in public open space, would it not? Just to get some idea of cost, we could look at the cost of having it as a park, and it probably wouldn't need a huge amount done initially because it is beautiful as it is. It's got many of our trees, town trees are located there. So do you have any sense of what that capital cost of clearing it so that it could be a park would be?
No, that's something staff can look into if you want them to. But again, you can use your open space DCC to help fund some of the capital improvements that will be required. As for the buyout, what you want to offer, if you offer a buyout, is up to you.
And last word, maybe, Councilor King.
Yes, not being a lawyer, but knowing that there is somebody of legal mind on our council, with the town being owning the majority of shares, and it's stated publicly or in hard copy somewhere that those grounds be either a golf course or a park, how obligated legally is the town or council to keep that in that regard, or to change it?
The delegation can't answer that question. That would be something staff would bring back to us, so stay tuned.
That's a lawyer answer.
That's just the facts. I don't know all the answers to that. There are significant corporate issues, there's significant trust issues, as in the trust deed, and then there's public process. So how and when that unfolds will be something staff can bring back to us in due course for some options. We will be running into some issues around timing if we want to put it on a referendum in 4 months' time, but staff can advise us on that. As soon as they're able to, along with the rest of their work that they've got to bring to us. So at this point, unless there's further questions, I want to thank the delegation for their attendance, and we'll see where it goes from here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, council.
All right, so move on to minutes of meetings. So for approval, we have the regular council meeting June 6th.
Move. Second.
On approval, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. We have the public hearing meeting minutes of June 6th as well for approval. Move approval.
Second.
On approval, all those in favor? Motion's carried. And then for receipt, the committee of the whole meeting minutes of June 13th.
Move. Second.
Receipt then, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Management board has been brought to us, updated to us, and for receipt.
Movers. Second.
Okay, on receipt then, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Since I went to the CVAC nominating entity committee meeting yesterday, the question was asked about Northeast Stormwater Management Plan. Of course, it affects their parking plans, so I'll jump the gun on Councillor Swift's question and ask the CAO to update us, because I said we're working hopefully towards the fall and then into the spring next year for completion. So hopefully that's about right.
That's our yearly answer.
Well, I know.
Well, the public open house process that the consultants managed has occurred. They're now just in the process of finalizing the document. We're still anticipating receiving the stormwater management plan by the end of this month.
Okay, and it comes here for council, or?
Yes, and then we'll do up the staff report and begin the process of I call it educating council and the rest of the bylaws, that kind of thing.
Right, and staff are working on those this week.
Yes.
Yes, Councillor.
Yeah, and regarding the wayfinding signage, I did take the excerpt from Al Fraser and shared it with the BIA group that I met with last night, and they're happy to see that it's working its way through the process. I think they're in phase 1, and they appreciate it, shall we
council manager report? Seeing none, we'll move on to unfinished business item number 2, which is the rezoning and development permit application, DP 17.7, 1700 Balmoral.
Move third reading?
Second.
The seconder, so at third reading, it has now been moved and seconded. Discussion. Councilor Morgan.
Thank you. Took the opportunity this afternoon on my way to council to take a drive around 1700 Balmoral and actually have a look at the house. I was impressed with the house, and it's sad to think that it's going to be another part of our history. Except, though, I have since learned that there's opportunities out there for those people who, in fact, feel a connection to that house. Opportunities are being presented to our town, vis-a-vis Philburg and of course the museum and previous owners as well, which is good because at least we're not going to lose the house in its entirety, and bringing that back into the community made me feel much better. I'm wondering too, though, if my fellow councillors know more about this than perhaps I do. You attended, Russ, a meeting?
Yeah, so, sorry.
So-
Just cautioning council that we have to make sure that we're not receiving necessarily new information at this juncture, or else we may have to go through another public hearing, but I think it's not really new in the sense that the house has been up for consideration for heritage protection or perhaps disposal of that house in a way that recognizes its heritage. So I think that's necessarily new, but with that in mind, move on.
You can stop me whenever you think I'm crossing that line, but in reading the reports, I understand that it's not feasible to move the building, and that's too bad because it is a beautiful building. I've seen it as well, and it's interesting that it's the same era, maybe the same builder as the Philburg Lodge, and so I was at a Philburg meeting the other day, and I just reminded them that this is this building. There's a development going there. You may want to talk to somebody, so not giving them information other than, this is what's happening. So there may be an opportunity to repurpose some of the building, the siding, the windows, and understand from what we heard prior when Derek Jensen was making his presentation that they have reached out to the previous owners and are looking at somehow saving some of this building, because we can't save the whole building. At least we can benefit it in some other areas. So,
Just at this juncture, I will ask the planner, to what extent, if any, can that kind of consideration be added perhaps as a development permit condition in terms of doing something with that building other than just moving it?
It could be added. It's an item that did come up in the public hearing. The question, if it's added to the outstanding conditions, then it's something that has to be done.
Excuse me, Marvin, could you speak up? Sorry.
If it's added to the outstanding conditions, if there's an action, that action has to be done. That's just
Before the permit can be issued?
before the permit can be issued, yes.
All right.
If it's added as an outstanding condition prior to adoption, then something like, staff bring back a report on the feasibility of salvaging portions of the building with the Philburg Heritage Site, then we can just bring back information and council can at that time decide.
Okay. Councilor Graham.
Yeah, so I spoke with Mr. Cameron on this several months ago, just because I figured it might come up, and I think at his office at Tim Hortons, I think. Anyway, he's in full agreement with this. The only thing that he would ask is that if, say, Philburg wanted to do it, they would go walk around, figure out what they want, and come up with a plan to get rid of it. So rather than going through all that formality, I think that we can take him at his good word to do that, and I think that would not slow down this process in any way, and he's completely on board with this.
Okay. Councilor Price.
Yes, and I too took the opportunity to look at the house, and you can see through the window that there's beautiful archways inside. It is, I would say, it actually is a rival to the Filberg. And just reading through Martin Haggerty's, the part that Marcia Turner put into the public hearing, built in 1936, this house is an excellent example of the arts and crafts influence on domestic architecture, which began in Europe, notably in England in the late 19th century. And his recommendation, it was a report that was commissioned by the town way back to look at buildings in the town. But his recommendation that to the then Heritage Advisory Committee was to promote this building for municipal heritage building status. It is architecturally important relative to the community and possibly to the West Coast. And it is, I mean, it's an absolutely charming building, and I know that developing around this would be most inconvenient. I have heard that moving it is not an option, but life can be messy sometimes, and I can't support taking off. We would have to take the covenant off it. At present, it is protected by covenant, and I would be loath to support that.
So, and those covenants were registered when a previous building was proposed, which isn't proceeding, so they're related to that development. They weren't related to anything to do with that report you referenced. Council never did proceed with any kind of...
No, it was never a heritage designation, I
So
understand.
that report was many years ago, you said?
It was a considerable number of years ago, but what it does is it's a description of the building, and it speaks to it. I just quoted a small amount of the report, but just to say that it is in a town that has very few heritage quality buildings. It's probably pretty much at the top of the list, I would say. So, and I know Council previously worked really hard to retain the building and did come up with something that gets residential units on the site and kept the building.
Yeah, my understanding, that was it was going to be used as a common area, a common meeting room, for example, which, to my understanding, most developments do not utilize anymore. So that's probably reflecting the current reality in that kind of usage. Who else on this side? Anybody else?
I would just like to make another comment in support of what Councillor Grant said. We need housing in our town of Comox. We know that these units are going to be an asset to the community. My concern was that heritage be preserved as much as possible, and as I understand, the owner has been out to the community and reached out to the community to do whatever is possible to save it. So I would be supporting the reading.
Great. Anything else on this side of the table? So if not, at third reading, are you ready for the question? Yeah, you might be. All those in favor? And those opposed? One opposed. So motion at third reading passes and at adoption.
Move adoption.
Second.
At adoption, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? One opposed? Motion's carried. And to deal with the phase development agreement, we have to give a third reading.
Move third reading.
Second.
At third reading, all those in favor? Any opposed? One opposed? Motion's carried. And for adoption of the phase development?
Move adoption.
Second.
And any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? One opposed? Motion's carried. And that DP development permit 17.7 be issued subject to the conditions listed in Schedule 1.
Move.
Second.
Any discussion at this point on the conditions or the permits? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? One opposed, motion's carried. And finally, that the restrictive covenants, as noted there, be discharged.
Move.
Second.
All those in favor? And one opposed, I'm assuming, so motion is carried. All right, thank you, council and staff. And we'll move on to the next item of unfinished business, which is in relation to 618, 634 Anderson Road has been given third reading and staff recommend for adoption.
Second that.
This is for the apartment building on Anderson. Any discussion on adoption? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. And the phased development agreement for adoption.
Move.
Second.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. And development permit 17-1 be issued subject to conditions laid out in the reports.
Move.
Second.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. And that restrictive covenant is noted to be discharged.
Move.
Second.
All those in favor? Motion's carried. And the last item of unfinished business is the 1170 Lazo Road subdivision development permit.
Move adoption.
Thank you. The zoning amendment, bylaw amendment.
Second.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. And the phased development agreement
Move
for
adoption.
adoption.
Second.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. All right, so that takes care of unfinished business. We have for receipt the regional district meeting minutes of the board, the waste management board, and the hospital board.
Move receipt.
Second.
Receive those. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. And for adoption, the Comox election and Senate voting bylaw.
Move.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. So that brings us to new business. We have a report from our Director of Finance regarding municipal liability insurance and a recommendation. So you can move the recommendation or you can...
I'll move the recommendation.
Second.
On the recommendation discussion.
Very thorough.
That report is highlighting potential savings. What I think you'll anticipate seeing here is once notice is given to MIA, they will be here relatively quickly to give us a presentation as to why we should stay with it. And, you know, I'm kind of interested in seeing the pros and cons of this fully in detail. I know it's about money, but it's also about an insurance agency that serves most of municipalities, although I understand that's starting to change. So and I have talked to staff, to our CEO and our finance director about that. So no doubt we'll hear more from MIA in the near future. Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion's carried. So with the notice to be issued. And also from our Director of Finance, the Statement of Financial Information, or SOFI report for
Move receipt.
and approval.
Second.
On receipt and approval, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion is carried. And that's a bit of a precursor to the annual report, which will come in early July. All right. Okay, that brings us to correspondence. We have for receipt the taxi application from Joe's Taxi.
Move receipt.
Second. And a good question.
Yes, and we can, if we wish, provide comments. So, go ahead.
I thought he was already a taxi service.
I do believe he is, but perhaps he wants to explain. I'm not sure. Do you know any more details? He's also applying to the regional district, it looks like.
I've seen
Pick up
many
some of
ads
the
for a
airports.
long time for Joe's.
Yeah, maybe, does anyone here at staff level know why we're getting this? Because he's talking about 3 conventional taxis, 2 wheelchair accessible, and then he's saying he's applying for the Comox Valley Regional District. So I don't know whether that applies. No, he's already doing service in the town. So.
Yeah.
Okay, so perhaps you can look into that. I mean, you can receive it, but you don't necessarily need to say anything about it unless it's relevant. So he's already operating here, to my understanding. So.
Yeah, he is. He's got the base.
Pick me up the airport. So we'll leave it at that. So all those in favor of receipt? Any opposed? Motion's carried, and staff will look into whether we need to provide any more comments. And the ISFELD grad is coming up next week, so they're looking for the permission of the grad car cruise on the usual terms.
Move receipt and grant permission.
Second.
Councilor McKinnon, you have a question?
I'm all in favor of the car cruises. Just out of curiosity, they send the letter, it's notification, and what actually does the town do to cover themselves for legal liability or anything, if they have to do anything?
We do have a standard procedure, but I think we ask for insurance.
It just struck me today when I read the correspondence, and I thought,
The correspondence we send back usually requires that they notify all emergency service providers about an event that may impact the route or whatever of the emergency services, as well as the requirement for insurance.
All right. Do we vote on that? I don't think so. All those in favor? Motion's carried. And then the letter from the Island North Film Commission, or email, looking for a letter of support.
I'll move receipt and that we give them a letter of support.
Second. I understand the regional district is largely engaged in this with MOTI because of in their area, but certainly we can provide a letter of support. So, any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Pickup truck being chased and forced to stop on that. There you go. And a letter to receive kudos for Hugh McKinnon.
Go ahead, you make this one.
Move receipt.
Nobody seconded.
Second. All those in favor? Motion's carried, and apparently you get hugs with that, it says at the bottom. We'll leave you to collect,
Buddy hugs.
we'll leave you to collect on that. All right, okay. The last issue, the last burning issue here for tonight is the letter or email from Hugh Wallace regarding beach fires at High Bay.
I will move receipt of that.
Second.
Okay, and does council wish any further information from staff on it?
Well, I don't actually have any problem with allowing some of the gas firings if they do an okay. I think that's probably a good suggestion.
Yeah, if I may.
Yeah.
Why would we have that we prevent gas rings down there? Because even when there's a fire ban, we're allowing them, or the regional district allows them at use fit.
When our bylaw was initially brought forward, it came forward as a very restrictive approach to burning.
Right.
That, and that's where it comes from. So it's also an issue that if you allow it on the beaches, I would anticipate the next request you're going to get is from homeowners who want the same ability to do it in their backyard.
But we can have gas fire rings in our backyard in the town of Comox proper now.
Technically, no.
No, you can't.
I thought we passed that like 3 years ago.
I think you can if it's
Pretty
a
sure we
cooking
can.
device.
If I make
But
a
anyway.
suggestion, perhaps we could get a report from the fire chief. And
Thank you,
decide on this
Councillor
later
Grant. I was just going to
At the
suggest
next meeting.
Yeah, we won't get it for our next meeting. That's July 4th, which is a regular council meeting. And possibly for the one in August, although we don't have any more committees to hold until September, so it may have to wait. We'll see.
Miss the whole season.
Well, yeah. Anyway,
I would be willing to make a motion that we allow this as Oak Bay does for now, and if we want
As
to
an interim
revisit,
measure.
if we want to revisit this after the beach season, I'd be good with that too.
yeah, I don't know enough about Oak Bay, but if you've made the motion, so we move to receive.
I'd second that.
So you're saying allow it as Oak Bay has recently done, which I don't know what that is because I can't find that link right now. But
I think if I'm correct with this, they're just allowing you to have the gas firings at the beach. I think
these
that's
are
what they're doing.
people's own deals.
Yeah, yeah. Does that make sense, or?
Well, for clarification, I'd ask where are you allowing it?
Well, it says on Kai Bay, right?
So anywhere in High Bay?
And what do you require? Well, it's just a normal motion, I guess. It's not a delegation. So.
Yeah, with this, staff would bring forward an amendment bylaw to the next meeting of council.
So yeah, it can't happen without an amendment.
So
So it would come to the next council.
which is going to be
2 weeks.
2 weeks? 2 weeks? Okay, I'm good with that. Let's do that.
So, okay, so anything further on that motion? Yes.
Just to clarify for my sake, then, do we get an opportunity then to hear from the fire chief before
Well,
that?
we'll hear from staff for sure. Hopefully the fire chief will.
That's.
I think it works. I think it works all.
Yeah.
Can I have clarification on the motion, please? I
Motion
have referred
is-
to staff for a report,
No,
and I have
no.
allowed the fire.
No, the referral to the staff was not moved formally. It was just to receive it, so we received it. So now it's to move to allow it as per Oak Bay, and we'll get a bylaw amendment to that effect for the next council meeting to consider. So it's not actually happening until that.
Okay.
Then you got to go through what, 3 readings and all 9 yards of that. So. Anyway, so all those in favor of that? Motion's carried. All right. And so that deals with all the items of correspondence, reports from members of council. We'll start with Councilor Van Grant.
Good night, where am I? So, first thing, I went to Rock for the Kids for the Child Development Society down in the park here, and did some setup and helped them tear down. Unfortunately, the weather wasn't 100% great, but it was a great event. Lots of people in the park. I'm going to guess at about 1,300 to 1,400 people down there, and it was really great to see the park actually being used for what it's designed to be, so that was good. I also went to Seafood Fest, the gala dinner, and the kitchen party. I have to say the kitchen party was quite a hit. It was, I would recommend it to anyone. They had the old East Coast band playing, and it was just a really fun, good event. So I think it really kind of stepped up Seafood Fest to another level. I went to the Sports Commission where we gave them an update on the pickleball courts, and the pickleball courts, TACO is in there. Were they paving today, do you know, or is it tomorrow?
They're paving by the end of this week.
So the pavement will be going down, all the prep work is done, and we needed to go to the Sports Commission to get the $20,000 from the Regional District release, which has now happened. And I also went to the Water Commission where we talked about a RFQ for the water system, so we need to go out to some of the larger companies. There's not very many companies that are qualified to do this kind of work. So just the terms of reference as to how that will all happen. So we did that yesterday. That's my report.
Okay, Councilor Arnold.
Yeah, thank you. I attended the Cannabis Open House at the Rec Center.
I didn't.
The Shellfish Gala Dinner was at the FCM prior to that. On Monday, I attended the Philbert meeting on behalf of Councillor Swift, and things are moving along there. They did receive a few noise complaints from the Shellfish Festival part or music that was going on, but it seems standard, you know, the odd complaints. But they are going to address that with each of the complainants. And one of the things that they did talk about was a taxation issue that they recently found out that they should have been paying GST for the last number of years, and so they're going to have to come up with a plan to pay that back. So there's more discussion on that. I'm guessing Councillor Swift will have more information on that. I also attended last night the VIA meeting, and they talked about, the Compass Adventures talked about this Sail Fest that they're having this weekend. It's going to be happening out with their fancy sailboats out there, so everybody should be out there, and another beer garden. That's about that. I think I'll leave it at that.
At beer garden.
At beer garden.
That's quite a phenomenon.
Yeah.
You lost me up here. Councilor Swift.
Okay, thank you. I attended the Comox Strathcona Waste Management meeting, and we had presentations from 2 different waste-to-energy technologies. One fellow had come all the way from the Netherlands to do 10 minutes of presentation. But it was actually kind of an interesting one because it's scalable and you can do different components of it. And they've been operating throughout the world for a number of years. And most recently they are operating in Surrey. So we're looking at in a little more depth. The organics facility planning for Campbell River is continuing. Of course, the costs are escalating, now at about $12.2 million, up from the 8 originally predicted. And they think that the tipping fees would be around $100 a ton. So we'll see where that goes. At the Comox Strathcona Regional Hospital building, the good news there was that we're only going to borrow $89 million. You know, not much when you say it fast, but it's less than the 117 originally predicted, and it will likely be paid off within 10 years, which was faster than originally anticipated. There was a strategic planning session, and the decision around the board was to stay the course of funding the capital projects for the main facilities. There was some thought that it might be do something else, but they decided that's where to remain and just be advocates for the other issues that are of interest. I attended the KFN government sessions for a day and a half, and they were excellent. And it was not only excellent between the other crossovers that we all attended, but also between the other groups that was there. And there was even the mayor from Savored was there, so that was good and worthwhile. Went to the sewer meeting, and we were discussing the roles and structure of a liquid waste management plan. And there is a public component to it, and looking for representation from many groups for the public group. So if you know of anybody that you think would be suitable, you can encourage them to apply. It's online. I did go to the information session on creating utilities commission. And then lastly, I went to the shellfish brunch and cooking lesson. And that was fun too. And so you can just see the shellfish festival growing through leaps and bounds. And that's my report.
Okay. Sir, I'd like to add something. I got flustered when I said beer garden there, and I just lost all track of where I was. But a couple things that perhaps council should know is that the Wills Marine has been sold. And there's Desolation Sound Yacht Charters has gone into partnership with a company, I think it's Sound Pacific out of Tofino. So they're going to be taking that on and maybe bring a bigger development there. And the mall may have changed hands. I understand that there's a new owner. So they, I'm hoping things transition easily there. And of course, the change in command we had today with the Wing Chief Warrant Officer is going to Winnipeg. We've got a new Chief Warrant Officer.
Perfect.
Yeah, sorry about that. Thank you.
No worries. Councillor Grant on this side.
Thank you. I attended the Seniors Board meeting, also attended the Canvas Open House, and I had the honor of presenting the McLean Memorial Award to Gavin Hughes. Thanks to you for that opportunity. I also attended the government-to-government presentation by KFN, and as Councillor Swift said, it was a very positive and high level of good communication, I guess is another bottom line of that. That was excellent. Attended the CSWOM and Hospital Board, and a very good report on behalf of Councillor Swift, except I'll just make one small point, and that is, it was interesting, both presentations, they were emphasizing the fact that they are now willing to make their service tailor-made, which is a big step, given what we were hearing when I first stepped on that board. So, just a small point. Well, actually, it isn't a small point. It's a very good point. Yes, and that concludes my presentation.
Councillor McKinnon.
Yes, briefly, I attended the Burwork Open House on June 7th. Highland Celebration of Excellence at Highland Secondary School. Made a presentation there. June 14th, the open house for Town of Comox retail cannabis sales information session. It was well attended, lots of questions. Missed the Shellfish Festival as I was picking up grandkids in Vancouver, and I was at the Comox First Nation and neighboring local governments government forum, and I just have something to present to Mayor and Council. The Comox First Nations Council gave a gift to the Town of Comox, this beautiful canoe, which I'm going to pass around now. Barbara's seen it, I think, so I'll do that. And Councillors Mark Grant, Councillor Maureen Swift, Councillor Barb Price, and myself discussed receiving this gift, and we thought it would be a positive reminder of our good relationship with Comox First Nations, and in the spirit of reconciliation, if we could humbly suggest that the gift be prominently displayed here in council chambers. And therefore, we'd like to propose a motion that Mayor and Council consider this request. And I'd be remiss if I didn't remind that June 21st is Comox National Indigenous Day, and there's events from 2 o'clock to 7 p.m. on Comox First Nations. So in any case, our motion would be to display that prominently here as a reminder of our good relationship with our neighbors, and hoping that
I'll
would be
second
considered.
Don't drop it.
I'll make a comment.
Okay, I'm just going to say I don't think it's really appropriate or necessary to have a motion. First of all, we don't have right now a place to put it, but I'm sure we can find. We don't have a trophy case here anymore for other reasons, so if we find a little ledge or something that we can install on it, we'll put it perhaps with some of the other artwork.
Next to your gavel.
Perhaps, although I'd hate to see it get knocked off there while people are cleaning. So, anyway, it's not customary to entertain motions during this part of the meeting, so if you can just leave it with staff, they'll find a spot for it.
With all due respect, do we want to get back into having a case with these types of things? Because we did.
Yeah, we did for many years, and we took it out.
We recently, cleaned up council chambers. Maybe there's a place that we could do it in town hall.
Yeah, we'll leave that for
leave
future
it for
discussion at
staff.
some point. We'll see. I think there were good reasons for getting rid of the trophy case to declutter, and no doubt we'll get other things as we go along. So I'm not sure where all that other stuff went. We had like a Myers lamp from Cumberland and other things.
Museum.
Museum got it. Okay, there you go.
And the case.
And the case. So there you go. Well, anyway, we can put that in, leave that in our CEO's hands. We'll take care of it.
And maybe even in the museum.
Anyway,
Well, that's a thought too.
is that the end of your report, Councillor McCann?
That concludes my report.
Thank you. Councillor Price.
Yes, and I, as was mentioned, was also at the government, and we were given it as witnesses to the event. It's a tradition, I guess it's to attain and it was an incredible event. I also attended the Berwick Open House and the Regional District Sewage Commission, which has been reported on, and the Water Committee and the Sports Commission, which has already been mentioned, and also the Regional District Committee as a whole, where we had a presentation on the Connect with the Regional District. Connect CVRD, I don't know if anyone's been on, I've registered, and it's a public information, public dialogue place. I went to the recreational cannabis open house, the seafood gala dinner at Bilberg, which was as wonderful as it always is, and along with Councillor Swift, the Comox Valley Liquid Waste Management public meeting last night, which was the kick-off to the public process. And that's my report.
Okay, thank you. Since returning from UBCM and the FCM appointees, I attended the Canadian Angus Association Annual Conference opening reception, which involved 150 representatives from all across Canada. We had a dinner out at Brad Chappell's farm on Silver Road, and people from all across Canada were greeted, and he said, welcome to the best place on earth here, so they were quite impressed with that setting and with their experiences here. In concert, as mentioned earlier, before that I attended a farewell barbecue to Pastor Dave Postal from the Pentecostal Church, and brought greetings on behalf of the town and well wishes. And with that, the Sea Cadet Grad Parade occurred, and I was able to hand out an award to one of the cadets. Well-attended event, hard-working cadets. Of course, we see some of them in the summer at Quadra. ICE-T, or Coastal Economic Trust, had one of their committee meetings, and they're still processing applications. Met with some residents of the Butchers Road area looking at subdivision issues. Pretty much all the events of the Shellfish Festival, including the couple of events during the week at the Expo, and hearing some of the keynote speakers. And that was a very successful 10 days of all sorts of activities. And we also had a meeting of the Mayor's Cup Golf Tournament Committee. That is coming up on September 7th. So the town has entered a team, as we've done in the past. And there's an opportunity for tryouts. They started last week, and I think I'm so far 5th on the team, no 4th. So. In any event,
So we have a chance this year.
coming up relatively soon. And speaking of Mayor's charity events, I presented the Mayor's Cup Hockey Trophy, such as it is, new and improved, to Courtney Council and Acting Mayor Theos.
That is her.
Yeah, sorry. We'll get them next year. See what else. Oh yeah, the gala dinner. I did enter again a competition for the shucking with Shucker Patty, the world record holder, and came second again. But it was a little more fun this time. We got to shuck and slurp the oysters all as part of it. So
Shucker won again, did he?
But it was an entertaining event throughout the whole weekend, and the highlight for me, as well as I'm sure others, as I mentioned, the kitchen party and concert to follow. Well attended. There'll be further information coming back as to members and so on and so forth on that. I've also invited the organizers of the concert to come and speak to us in the near future as to how that went. Of course, they were supporting a charitable cause there. So, Cannabis Open House, the Healthcare Foundation Golf Tournament, and what else do we got here? The CVAC nominating entity meeting was yesterday, as I mentioned. And just so you're aware, there's some move afoot right now for DFO to rejig their fisheries patrol surveillance service, and there's a concern that was expressed to me earlier this week that may be located outside of Comox. It's been in Comox for a number of years, and according to the person I talked to, there's as many as 30 jobs related to that.
Is that PAL?
Yes, that's the one. And contacted immediately CVAC and the 19 Wing, and we talked to them that day and expressed my concerns on behalf of council that might happen. And there's meetings being scheduled with our MPs here locally, and we'll see where it goes. The tender document I saw was amended to actually take Comox out of the mix, which is unfortunate. We'll see if that can be changed. The tender's not due, or it doesn't come to full term until middle of July, so there's still time. And even this morning, talking about it after the change of appointments for the wing commanders, there is some hope that we can get that sorted out, because we hate to lose some of those jobs. So more to follow on that as we know more information. And yeah, a brief update lunch today with our economic development officer. And it looks like this event has now reached the point where they'll be looking at probably some sort of RFP for an event coordinator, because they've got it to a point where it's bigger than they can handle at staff level, but it's also got to the point where it's more viable for somebody to take that on as an event. So more to follow on that as time goes on. We're all still quite tired after 10 days, but very busy and successful 10 days nonetheless. All right, so that's my report, and we'll now go back to the agenda for any media questions at this time, any public questions at this time. Former Councillor Davis.
Thank you very much, Worship. Not to demean Don's eloquent presentation, but over the years there's been quite some confusion over the term referendum and plebiscite. So could council give consideration to make it a plebiscite question, then it's non-binding, and ask a general question, is the community interested in pursuing it or not?
Right.
Just leave that with you.
All right, yeah, that's always an option, so we'll consider those things in the fullness of time here once we hear back from the staff. Thank you.
I might just add to what Mr. Davis commented, is that I think the town of Qualicum just did that. They had a plebiscite rather than a referendum question with taxpayers about plastic bags and use, and it's a non-binding, as you say, and it got feedback from the community. Yeah.
No, that's
they used it, and the council used it.
That is one way
to information, so make a decision.
Yeah. So that's it. We do have an in-camera meeting, so a motion to go in camera under section 91A and 1K. Motion to
Second.
All in favor? And we'll adjourn the meeting until the room clears. And we'll deal with that shortly. And CIO is going to get that AC to work.